Oh, hi everybody. We've been here.
Welcome.
Something weird happened. If anybody else has been around, it's technology, and we're used to it by now. I'm Tara. I'm your host for today. Cameron is here. He's just started doing the light sketching that is in the reference piece. He's using our Etchr graphic pens. And he's going to be walking us through sketching landscapes, adding movement, and bringing life to your drawings. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, turn on your notifications to stay up to date, share the link with artist friends to help build the community and bonds. And I will be dropping in Etchr information and links throughout. And now back to Cameron.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining today. I guess I've been kind of going on without you there for a little bit, but I haven't gotten too far. I'm just going to run you through a couple of my example sketches to show you sort of some of my past work. So this is what we're trying to recreate today, and we'll see how that ends up going. And I do a lot of these pines. So we have a cottage in. Oh, is it showing up still or yet?
You're good. You're there.
Okay. The sketch is short. Yes, these are just some. Can you see the sketches here?
Yep.
Okay. Here's some examples, and these are mostly done. Most of my work is done from life, so I'm doing it plein air, mostly just on trips and different sort of outdoor excursions. So those are all from life there. But I enjoy working from photos as well. It's a lot of the time you can't get outside, so you gotta make do with what you have. So I think we probably missed this, but I was doing a rough pencil sketch here, and so I started with a really rough big shape over here. This is my first sort of outline, and then I'm slowly breaking it up into smaller and smaller pieces. So I'm sort of cutting the shape down into more elements. So I start with this big shape, and then I'm just drawing abstract shapes. I'm not actually trying to draw the tree. So I'm not trying to draw what I think it should look like. I'm trying to actually look at what the image is and interpreting that instead. So you can see it separate into there's the rocky shoreline kind of down below here. And then I sort of started carving out some of the shapes in the branches, and just like really rough, bigger shapes to start. And then I'm slowly refining it throughout the process as I go. So I sort of got this one tree here, and then there's another tree coming up behind. And this pencil, eventually I'll just erase this eventually, so it's not super important. And once I get also the rough sort of shapes down, I'm going to start thinking about looking for different shades or different tones in the drawing. I think it's really important to get your darks and lights figured out, because that brings out the sort of three-dimensionality of the drawing and takes it from being sort of a flat something on a piece of paper, and it gives it actual a bit of realism in life. So I'm trying to divide into sort of three shades. There's like the light, which is going to be the background, and then there's going to be like a really dark area, and then there's going to be sort of a medium shade as well.
Cameron, what grade pencil are you using?
This is just an HB. I don't normally get too too specific with my pencils. I just use basically whatever's in the drawer for these. Just because I'm going to be erasing it eventually, anyways. I find something not too dark though is better because it kind of leaves less of a mark. My dog has just joined me for this drawing as well.
All kinds welcomed.
Yeah. So now I'm looking here and I'm trying to find those darker areas. And it looks like in here is kind of a bit darker. So I'm going to just like shade it a little bit just so I actually know where it is. And then this is, so that between the different branches, the sun is going to be hitting the top of the branch, and then it's going to leave the bottom sort of all shaded.
And are you just using the natural light that's in the photo as your reference?
Yeah, so I'm trying to play it up a little bit. So I'm trying to really focus and see where the light might be coming from. So you can kind of squint your eyes a little bit and try to figure out where the big shapes are. So basically just dark and less dark. It's kind of what I'm looking at. And you can feel free to sort of interpret it as well. It doesn't have to be exactly right. Like the tree's not going to be offended if you get it a little bit off. You can't do that with portrait drawings though.
Nothing's perfect in nature.
No, that's the nice thing about it is that no one has to know if you kind of take artistic liberties with it a bit. And I'm sort of simplifying the shapes as well because you're not going to draw every single pine needle obviously on the tree. You're going to be there the rest of your life. So you can kind of work on, you can change the shape of things and sort of improve the composition a little bit. Sort of make it more of a sort of, you make it better lead in, or you could remove elements. Like I removed this tree at the side. I'm not going to do the clouds, I think. So I'm just going to try to focus in on the tree as a sort of sculptural element, I guess.
Now, I notice you're just naturally holding the pencil in the middle and towards the end.
Yeah, it's a good point actually. I find it just helps me be a little bit more loose at the start. I'm just getting the rough shapes figured out. I haven't even thought about that actually before, but it's a good point. I'm gonna try to finish this up because I want to focus on the pen aspect more. So I've got this rough shape, and I'm just gonna quickly get a bit of rock figured out. I'm playing up the curves in the rock a little bit and sort of bringing you into the tree here. Sort of pull your eye in. And I think it's okay to add a bit of a bit more movement than is actually there. So sort of broken up by these little fissures or cracks in here, and then where the pine needles fall as well. I'm just leaving out the bushes on the side. Just makes our life a little easier. Okay, so I've got my rough shape now. I'm going to take out the pen. I'm starting with I'm just going to start with the 005, but it's not super important that you get the exact same size. I just like using a thinner pen because I find it's more forgiving. So each line carries a little bit less weight, and you can be a bit looser with it and quicker. And I'm using the Etchr graphic pens. I've just started using them recently, but I'm really enjoying them so far. So I'm just going to sort of outline those shapes roughly. So throughout the process, I'm kind of refining it more and more.
Now with the pen, you have a closer hold to the tip.
Yeah, so the pen, it gives you a bit more control with the closer grip for sure. So when I'm trying to do these, just sort of outline the shapes, and I'm working from looser into more and more sort of controlled, I guess, throughout the process, and that kind of helps me. It helps, like when using pen, I find it's obviously very permanent, so it's nice to sort of start more loose and light, and then slowly refine it as you go with more sort of intentional line work.
I'm going to drop the link in here again for the graphic pens that Cameron is using. And I'll also post a full link to our website where there are more information on events that we are hosting and supplies. Yes, these pens are waterproof. They do take a little bit of time to dry, but they are waterproof and light fast.
Yeah, I think that's an important piece to have, because especially if you want to incorporate watercolor as well, then you can just go right ahead and not worry about getting a huge smear across your page or anything. And sometimes I've also used just like a darker wash, so I use like a watered down ink. So I'm just gonna give you I'm gonna start getting the shading going, and I want to show you some of the techniques I'm using. So a lot of times I'm just using a straight hashing. So I'm just gonna do straight parallel lines, and then go across them at an angle. Then you can go the other side as well, and that gives you sort of a gradation. But I'm also going to be doing some more curved hatching, and that gives you a bit a bit more of a 3D sort of look to your drawing. Gives a bit more movement as well. So I'm going to be using that especially sort of in the rocks and to show the direction of the branches in the wind. So you can give a lot more interest. Then you can just go across it, and then you can also do parallel lines and then make it darker by adding more parallel lines closer together as you go lower down. And so that gives it a lot of movement there and a lot of shape to your lines. So I'm going to start by, I'm just kind of looking at the direction of the branches, and I'm going to just sort of fill in my light outlines. So I'm looking at the flow sort of the branches and trying to capture that with my line work. It's kind of coming away from the tree and being swept to the side.
So we have a question about your process. Do you use reference more for a starting point, or are you constantly looking at the image?
I'm constantly kind of going back and forth to the image. Maybe closer to the very end, I'd say I look at the image less, because I kind of already know what it's going to look like at that point. But I'm definitely, especially at the start, I'm really focusing on those shapes and trying to figure out. I think the important part is the sort of the general shapes and also the lights and darks.
Another question about the type of pen you use. Do you always use 100% black ink, or do you use other colors or sometimes gray?
I pretty much always just use just black ink. That's what I've sort of been used to, and I like the look of it. Sometimes I'll do washes though, a different color. I've used fountain pens as well.
You have a preference?
I was sort of using a range of different pens, and now I've settled on the fine tip, like the fine liners, like the graphic pens. I like that you can get the different sizes, and I find a lot of pens you just buy at the store, I guess, are quite thick, and it's hard to sort of work up your drawings and not just like ruin them with a single line. And then I actually got to like really thin pens as well, but then I realized that it kind of took too long to draw, so I was there like all day working on it. So especially when you're working from life, you have to capture the light, you have to be pretty quick. A lot of mosquitoes this weekend as well, actually. So I had to go to an island in the middle of the lake to draw this weekend. It was swarms of bugs out.
So you have been able to get back out and do some live drawing recently. That's great.
Yeah, I just got out for a day this weekend. I'm gonna get into the rocks here. So I like to do for the rocks, because it can look, maybe it looks quite flat in the reference photo. So that's one thing I like about doing it from life, is that you can sort of see the movement and the shapes better in the rocks. So you have to kind of imagine if you're sitting there, you can look at the sort of the contours of the rocks and figure out how the lines should bring that out in the drawing. So I like to do sort of a contour line, instead of just like a direct hatching, I'm looking at the sort of the flow of the rock, and how it sort of comes out towards me.
And those aren't very heavy lines. They're nice and light. It looks very natural.
Yeah, so that's a nice thing about having the fine tip, is you can, it doesn't look like there's snakes all over your rock so much. And you can, I sort of start pretty thin, but I might use a bigger pen as I go along. Switch to the 02 or the 01. And everything's relative in terms of shade. So the lines are going to carry a lot more sort of importance right now, but once you darken up some areas, it almost can sort of disappear if there's like a really dark area next to it. So that's one trick I use to sort of get around the permanence of the pen lines. So I'm actually going to go ahead and erase the pencil underneath, just so I got a better sense of what's going on.
And what kind of eraser are you using?
So I've got a kneadable eraser. I forget where it's from. It's been around for a while, but it's nice. I can sort of get different shapes with it and cover a lot of area pretty quickly. It's always nice to take away the mess a little bit and go back down to it. I'm going to switch to the 01 now. It's a little bit thicker. I'm going to bring in those shadows first. I'm just going to try to figure out where they are again here. I'm doing lines sort of following that same direction I started already. And this is quite dark actually, so I'm going to actually just hatch this in some of these really dark areas.
Are you using a particular kind of line, or?
So I started out with sort of directional lines to show the movement, and I'm doing more parallel lines mostly, and that will just darken it up. So I'm doing more parallel lines with the same direction as my other lines, and then sometimes I'll also, if I really need to make it dark, I'll just kind of start scribbling a little bit, or I'll do more hatching style as I go along. So you can see I'm bringing out the different shapes here, making them a bit more 3D. I'm realizing that there's some stuff, as I get more refined, I realize there's some stuff that I sort of just forgot about, and I can add that in. But once you have a reference point of a lot of the different shapes, it's a lot easier to place new shapes. So that's why I like working with sort of really big rough shapes first, and then it gives you a reference point to do the rest of your drawing. And this trunk here is basically going to be pretty much totally black. So don't be afraid to get like high contrast, really get the darks coming out. Sometimes I just basically just scribble as well. If it doesn't really matter, if it's gonna be really dark, you just kind of scribble it out a little bit. this piece here, this whole chunk is quite dark, so I'm gonna make sure that comes out. And then in here, it's gonna be quite dark as well, and that'll sort of bring your eye down towards the trunk as well. And this dark shoreline in the back, let me bring that out. Honestly, actually, I don't know if that shoreline is even in the reference. I think that was there when I was doing it from life. So feel free to add that or keep it out if you want as well.
Giving us permission to use our artistic license.
Yeah.
Question for you: do you ever leave the pencil lines in your sketch?
Normally I erase them, but sometimes I leave them in. It sort of shows the process a little bit. And sometimes I'll start actually just with pen as well. And I think it's interesting to see the how I sort of developed the shape and some of the lines that don't end up actually being super important in the end. But it's cool to see the process sometimes.
Just so you know, we're about halfway through.
Okay. One thing to keep in mind also, if you're doing it from life, you have to get the rough concept down really quickly. So you have to figure out what the lights and darks are, and they're basically going to change as soon as you, or before you figure them out. But you have to work really quickly for that reason, and you can't get too caught up in smaller details to start, because you have to make sure you know what the lights and darks are going to be.
Gonna paste in the link for Cameron's 90-minute workshop, which will be June 24th. Hope you can join us there, where he'll expand on his inking knowledge.
So I'm kind of going back across, and I'm adding more line work sort of in parallel with my existing lines and trying to darken things up again. And now you can see that as this is getting darker, this becomes a little bit less apparent. So it kind of keeps changing. I don't just work from one corner to the other, because it's always, everything's changing in reference with everything else. So I'm bringing out some smaller details too as I go along. Other things that I missed. You can kind of cut up your shapes a little bit and add smaller ones, which sort of suggest the pine needles. So sort of down here, you can see there's these little bits from the needles, and it's not actually drawing each needle, but it's suggesting that there might be some foliage there. So I think my next the workshop, I'm going to also get watercolor involved as well. And I think doing just ink on its own can be challenging sometimes, and it's nice to bring out the colors as well. But I like the challenge of just working with one color. It really makes you focus on the shapes and the tones. So generally at the bottom of the branches, it's going to be, you're going to get darker colors there, or darker shades, and it gets lighter as you get closer to the sun is illuminating them from the top.
We have a question here about paper. Don't you find the cold press to be rough on the fine tip pen?
It depends on the paper. I generally use cold press when I'm going to be doing a watercolor on top of it, and I haven't really noticed it's too bad. This is like actually a mixed media paper I think I'm using here, but I'm going to be using cold press for the live workshop coming up. And so this branch here, this is really dark, so I'm just sort of hatching over.
Drop that link in there again for the mini workshop.
So I'm definitely working around my page. I'm not just focusing one area. But I'm sort of going in steps and slowly adding, I guess, the same amount of detail to each area.
Does it help keep your image balanced?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. So I don't want to do all in one area and then realize that I've made it way too dark or something, or made a big mistake. So it's easier to, I like to be able to sort of step back and look at the piece as I'm going a little bit and figure out where it needs more contrast or where it's too dark or too light. And because I'm starting with sort of really light, it allows me to refine it as I go and not get caught up by issues at the start. So you can see some of these lines are obviously not right in the outline, and I'm not trying to make the outline very dark because that's not really natural when you have that really dark outline around. It's more a bit more organic.
We question about the mixed media paper. What kind of paper? Do you know the weight of it?
I think this is it's 98 pound Canson. And I think Etchr probably makes a similar product as well. I find it doesn't catch, or it doesn't carry the watercolor very well, so I wouldn't use it for that generally. So I'm sort of cutting the shapes down again a bit more as I'm going. And I'm getting the branches in a little bit as well too. And you can sort of feel the flow of the tree goes from the winds sort of generally are prevailing from the left side of my page here. So I'm trying to capture that and express that with the line work here. So I'm going to move back down to my rocks here. They've been a bit neglected. So I'm bringing them out a bit more by I can make the trees in the background a little darker, and that sort of makes the lines a little clearer there. And I'm bringing up some of these lines, but not all of them. So this is, you can see where there's like a rock sort of more in the foreground here. And then there's a sort of bush or something here. And there's needles, I think, down here as well. So I'm making this a bit darker. And this piece here is in shadow. So I'm doing lines to sort of bring out the movement again. I'm doing lines, parallel lines here, but I'm following the shape of the rock as well.
Notice you're varying the weight and not completing the full line too.
Yeah. Yeah, so it doesn't have to be I only want to sort of focus on some of the lines, so I'm not if they're all the same thickness and weight, it would be kind of monotonous, I guess. So the more important, the ones I really want to bring out, I'll be making a little darker. Then I'm letting the other ones kind of sort of fade in a little bit.
By using those varied lines, it's definitely showing the push and pull of value and giving a sense of movement.
Yeah, it's a better way than how I'd put it, I think. So normally as I kind of go towards one of the sort of the cracks in the rock or to the intersections, it's generally a bit darker. So I'll have some lines closer together. And that sort of shows that the sun's coming from this way, so it's going to be a little bit darker on the back side. And you can sort of squint your eyes a little bit and try to pick that up a little bit. Makes it a little easier if you're seeing the big shapes and the big sort of movement areas as opposed to sort of focusing in too much. So if you have glasses, you could just take them off for a little bit and it might help.
I'm dropping some info here on for some social media information. Please tag us with your artwork at #Etchr Studio for weekly prizes for our community members on Instagram and Facebook. Also, we have a Facebook page that is private. You can go on there, ask questions, share information, share your artwork, and everybody is very supportive. It is an excellent supportive community.
Yeah, I'm excited to hopefully see some of completed works as well. If anyone's sharing them on Instagram or anything. So yes, the rocks are kind of a bit more balanced now. They're kind of drawing the eye away before. It's pretty new for me to be drawing under pressure like this.
You're doing
Normally
a
I'm
great
drawing under
job.
pressure in some extent with the working from life, but probably less people watching normally when I'm doing it.
You're doing great. Dropping in the link again for Cameron's 90-minute workshop on June 24th, where he will expand on his ink skills and share some watercolor techniques.
I've got the cats nearby and just using the litter box actually right now. So you might be hearing a little scraping over there. Lots of animals here today. Normally it's not cats and I'm working from life, but they always have a way of knowing the best time to do it. I'm just gonna add some parallel lines to show the water, which I guess you guys don't even see in your drawing there. And I don't use I don't frame the image beforehand. I don't get like a 5x10 square to start. I like to sort of be a bit more organic with it and let the line work sort of draw you in a little bit more.
We have about 5-ish minutes left.
Oh, nice. Well, I got something on the page here anyway, so.
Don't forget to share your artwork at #Etchr Studio so we can see it and we can enter you into weekly prizes in our community.
So I'm kind of going back through now and adding touches of detail to sort of bring out the suggestion of the pine needles in there and just refining the shapes a little bit more. And I'm going to bring out I find it's always good to exaggerate the darks a little bit. It just gives it more shape. So you can cut into the white or the lighter areas and make it darker to change the shape, but you can't really go the other way around. So you can't bring a highlight back after you've gone over it. I think it's good to accept that not all your drawings are going to be perfect for sure. But if you can be a bit more, if you can kind of experiment with it a little bit and not get too caught up in the finished product, often you can find the most improvement and discover the most about your art. But it's good to just do more whenever you can. I've mostly just mostly learned from just trying to get as much drawing as I can in, and you learn along the way.
So we have a question about your mark making now. Are you randomly making marks, or is everything kind of super deliberate at this point?
I'm sort of trying to, it's somewhat random, but I'm just trying to work from, as I was saying before, I work from more loose and then bring in the shapes. So I'm seeing where they can refine the shapes a little bit more and get it closer to the reference, and also add a bit more contrast as well. So bring out the darks, make the darks darker, and get don't be afraid to go fully black in some areas. But I'm just kind of figuring out what I missed along the way and refining it. Like there's even a branch coming down here, I think. I'm adding these small little shapes. I wouldn't add these right at the start because it'd be too overwhelming. But if you break it into sort of more manageable chunks, you can figure out the big shapes, and then you can just put those pieces in at the end. Bringing out the shadow at the bottom of a lot of these branches.
Notice for your more determined lines, your hand is closer to the tip of the pen.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm a bit more confident about what I'm putting down at this point. It just gets easier and easier once you get more of the drawing figured out. You don't have to think about where each piece goes relative to each other. It's already there for you.
And you're still only on the second pen, correct?
Yeah, I'm actually on the 01. So that's actually a good point. I might swap it out for a slightly thicker one. I should have done that a while ago, actually. That sort of speeds up the process at this stage. You can. The lines are definitely more deliberate and intentional with the thicker pen.
And we're just about close to wrapping it up. So if you have any other questions, please put them in our feed. Here is our feedback survey. Let us know how we're doing, technical glitches and all. I own it.
Yeah, it's part of life now.
We've got questions about the animals' names. Let's give them some showtime.
It's kind of embarrassing, but the cat's name is actually is Kitty. It's actually my grandma's cat. Oh, she's on the table now here. And the dog's name is Luna, and she's featured in a lot of my social media as well. Actually, if you follow me there. I definitely didn't name the cat though.
Question, how do you know when to stop? Because there's always the danger of overworking a painting or drawing.
I find when I'm working from life, I find it's pretty easy to know when to stop, because you normally just have to stop if the light's totally gone, or I got too many bug bites, or just kind of tired of sitting on a rock. But I think it's okay to sometimes set a time limit, and that forces you to be a bit looser and sort of focus on the larger shapes and not get too caught up in details right away, because you can keep on working it basically forever. But I think that's why I like doing time drawings. Obviously not super strict, but having some sense of how long you want to spend on the drawing, and that definitely helps.
And when you're working on your shading, do you go light to dark or dark to light?
I go light to dark for sure, because you can't really go the other way around with watercolor, and also with pen as well. So I started with just getting the directional lines, and that sort of was like the mid-tone, and then I darkened up the shadows underneath, and sort of carved out the shape of the tree as I did that. I think I can probably call it there. Yeah, I always want to keep working, obviously, but I'm sure there's more I could do at this point. But I'm just happy I got something on the page after all those glitches and everything.
Lots of compliments on your style, inspiring others to try it. We've also got a statement here. There's something about the blockiness of the leaf bunches and the lines on the rocks that remind me of Japanese wood block prints.
That's nice to hear. Those are pretty amazing.
Thank you, everybody, for coming today. We are just about ready to wrap it up. Cameron will be back on June 24th and for his 90-minute mini workshop. Dropping in our feedback survey for everybody. Take a moment, let us know how we're doing. Great job today, Cameron, and enjoyed the cat's verbals as well.
No, thank you everyone for tuning in. Hopefully I see you again, and hopefully you learned something along the way too. So enjoy your weekend.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.